Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic, and it's all raw. And so where we're going to be picking up today is on page 68, very bottom paragraph. Now about sex. Oh no. Oh no. And if you've ever been at a meeting like my former home group, yep, that's what we're on. My former home group, we would read through the book for 10 minutes and then discuss. And you could always tell when we're at this part of the book. And the reason is because somebody would be reading, and once we commenced to outgrow fear, and then there would be a pause. Perhaps a pregnant pause. Paige, don't make those puns. That's inappropriate. But there would be this pause of like, oh, yikes. And then somebody would say, oh, now about sex. And there would be the snickers and the giggles. And there's this fear and trepidation and this energy that is palpable in the room. And it's a very human and normal thing to be like, man, why do we have to talk about this? Why do I have to look at this? And I want to point out our natural and very human sort of responses to it are exactly why. Because this is the area of my life where as a human being, I carry the most guilt, the most shame, the most secrets. And that's why I need to allow God, the higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe, that light into that darkness. And it is also where I have the greatest capacity to cause harm in the lives of others. And so I need to have a look. Now, I was going to try to fight the urge to make the joke, but we're going to make the joke. So some of you who are a little astute are going to realize that the vast majority of the directions of sex inventory are focused on page 69, which is hilarious. But I always like to take it one step further and tell you the joke about the confused sponsee. And it is just a joke. I think I'm funny, but it also illuminates the importance of working hands-on with sponsees, because, like, as we know, man, some directions can get confused. So let's say we got this confused sponsee. Now this sponsee shows up to the meeting to talk to their sponsor, and with their eyes full of lust, they and to be fair, this is typically not how it works in Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're wondering, I almost never hear, hey, I'm thinking of getting into a relationship from a sponsee. It's almost always, so I'm in a relationship and we're moving in. The classic joke, how do you tell an alcoholic's on the second date? Well, they got their 2 garbage bags full of stuff from the rehab they got kicked out of on the driveway, ready to move in. That's how you know. And that's not even the main joke I'm trying to tell. Oh, we got tangents on tangents today. It's going to be bad. But So the confused sponsee, fell in love, fell in lust, but the confused sponsee is a good sponsee. They're wanting to do their best, and they go to their sponsor and they're like, sponsor, I've fallen in lust, I've found Mr. Right. Now, if you're somebody like me, it was Mr. Right now. And let's be honest, it was Mr. Right out of jail. But that was the sort of relationships your girl was getting into. But I found the one. I look into, his or her, their AA eyes, and it's, the blue matches the blue of the grippy socks, and their hair, it matches the beautiful brown of the AA coffee. It's meant to be. And then the sponsor's like, oh no. So the sponsor says, all right, good sponsee, what I want you to do is I want you to go to the book and I want you to read the directions on what we should do about sex. And it should be easy for you to find. Most of the directions are going to be found on page 69. Now, the good sponsee is like, I'm going to be a good sponsee. I'm open. I'm willing. All right. And so the good sponsee even helps clean up after the meeting, puts away chairs, starts talking to people. Page 96 or page 69, that's where I got to go. Page 69, that's where I got to go. And then the good sponsee goes home and sits down, and 69, that's where I got to go. Takes the book off the shelf and opens the book and says, what page was that? Page 96, that's the page. So let's pop real quick over to page 96. And imagine you're reading this with the directions on sex and romantic relationships. Ooh la la. These are the directions. So it says, Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. And this is why I like to be a little bit more hands-on with my sponsees, because that's not good direction for a relationship. So all of that to say, I think I'm funny, and it's fine if I'm the only one. So going back to page 69, now about sex. So we're going to dive in and we're going to get the real directions on what we need to do, how we're going to inventory it, and why we're doing this. So it says, now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. So I want to point something out. If you're here today and this is an area of your life that, man, it's not going, it's not working, and you're here today and you can see that this is an area of my life that needs to be completely overhauled, what I want you to know is that you are not alone. In the early days, it was really expensive to put together a book, and they were scraping to get by, pinching pennies, trying to get enough money to write this book. And so if you're reading this and you're like, you know what, this is an area of my life that absolutely needs an overhauling, what I want you to know is you are not alone. They were not wasting pages of this book. You'll notice that we don't have a section in the big book on like, what do you do if you enjoy going on the Ferris wheel a little too much? That's not in the book. You know, what do you do if you're really particular about making sure you bundle up your socks correctly and they match? You know, that's not in the book, because if that is a problem, don't worry, we can work through it, but that's not a commonality that we have. And these are areas that we struggle in a variety of ways. But if you're looking at this area of your life and you're thinking, man, this area needs an overhaul, you are not alone. And then it goes on to say, but above all, which is to say more important than anything else, we tried to be sensible on this question. Sensible. And what we're going to dive into is something that is just so truly beautiful. This is a book that was written in 37-38, published in 39. It was 87 years ago in 5 days. It was published, but who's counting? And I want you to know what is described is truly healthy and refreshing. And so it's saying, above all, what is more important than anything else is to be sensible. It says it is so easy to get way off the track. An alcoholic getting way off the track about any issue, particularly one involving sex, I am shocked, because we'll get way off. And it goes on to say, here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. So what we're going to see is what are the two extremes that we can have about this area of our life, or certain people have about this area of our life. Well, this is the first. It says, one set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. And if you're like, what does that mean? So what it is saying is one set of voices say it's bad, don't enjoy it, don't have fun. I would say think of baseball, but I don't know if you've seen some of those baseball players, they're little cutie patooties. So that might not be the most helpful. But that idea of it is bad, it is sinful, it is shameful, no enjoying it, no. So that sort of shameful condemnation, that is one extreme. And again, I want to emphasize what we are trying to do is avoid these extremes. Now here's the other extreme. And then it says, then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex. They're just yelling. Who bewail the institution of marriage. Yeah, going at it like buddies. Which is, good on them. But who are like, that's all we need is we just need more of it. Get it out of your system. Scratch that itch until it's raw. Oh, gross. You can tell that I don't always plan things that I'm going to say. I say them and then I'm shocked by them too, you guys. But who bewail the institution of marriage. Oh, marriage is awful. It's outdated. It doesn't apply. We don't need it. And it goes on to say, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. Every problem, boom, it's about sex. We're going to focus on that. We're going to pull a Freud and talk about what cigars really mean. That sort of idea. And it goes on to say, it says, they think that we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. So one process of this is that it is bad, it is awful. You should feel ashamed when you're doing it, unless you're, making babies and nobody's having fun. That's the only way to do it. Or the extreme, which is do it all the time, get it out of your system, be careless, just go do. And it's like, hey, neither of those are healthy. It goes on to say, one school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. Right, Peppa? Can't not make that joke. Thank you for being of service. So what it's saying is one is you're going to have your gruel, your bland gruel, and you're going to like it, and the other's only pepper. Only pepper. And neither of that is healthy, especially for me. I'm allergic to peppers. So that's not going to work. Although I do think my stomach could handle gruel, so that's a separate issue. Alrighty, so straight pepper diet. Which also, if you're looking for a name of a band, welcome to the stage, our next performer, the not so straight Miss Pepper Diet. You gotta. Anyway, I'll only do that one more time. In this part of the book, because I am a mature adult and I'm handling this discussion in a mature adult way. So it says, we want to stay out of this controversy. We are not trying to focus on this. We are not trying to take a side. We're trying to find ultimately a God-centered, higher-powered centered, creator-centered path. And it says, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. So the judge, and it may be even in this case, the judge, jury, and executioner. We're not here to try control and manage and tell you what to do. But what we're going to do is we're going to find some guidelines through this process of inventory that is going to become our sex ideal, that we are going to take to prayer, that we are going to take to meditation, that we are going to allow to move in and through our lives, that allow us to be the best version of ourselves, to not cause harm, to not live in shame in this area. That's what we're trying to do. And one of the things that I really love is just how refreshing this part of the book is. Now, for those that are aware, Alcoholics Anonymous, it was influenced by the Oxford group. And I'm very fun at parties. You can tell I'm a straight pepper diet gal. I'm a hoot because I love the history. I love going down these little history rabbit holes. So I've gone through some Oxford group literature. One of my favorites is the 8 Points of the Oxford group, and in it talks about sex. Now I'm going to paraphrase what it says. And because it is religious, it uses religious language. So it'll say, the real sin of sex, which is to say the real defect of character that is involved in, and they use the word lust, is not what we often think about. What it is to not see the other human being as just that, a human being, but instead to treat them as an object for sex or my needs or my wants or marriage, to not see people as a human being, and a language that I use as a child of God. And so that's sort of a really healthy vision where it's and that's what we're going to talk about. So it goes on to say, and this is an important line, we all have sex problems. All have sex problems. Again, if you're struggling with one way or the other, you are not alone. This is a part of the human condition, and let's be honest, this is a part of the human condition where human beings struggle, and it goes on to say we'd hardly be human if we didn't. Not we'd hardly be an alcoholic, not we'd hardly be bad and shameful and wrong, we'd hardly be human. This is an area that for so many carry the most guilt, the most shame, the most old ideas, the most, all these things that get us hung up, and where we can have the most capacity to hurt others. So we all have these problems. Again, you are not alone. And that is such an important message. So we'd hardly be human if we didn't. So what can we do about them? Oh man, I gotta do something? Gosh, we're in the chapter How It Works. I almost thought we were into action with the action that we're supposed to take. All right, let's talk about it. So it says, we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Now, I'm going to put this on the screen so you're able to see it, but if you want, you can make a note that I like to put that in column 3. Then it says, whom had we hurt? We can put that in column 1. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Again, we can put that in column 3. Where were we at fault? Column 2. And what should we have done instead? Column 4. We got this all down on paper and looked at it. And so that's what we're going to do. So let me show you those columns. This one. There we go. Share screen. All right. So this is the columns. And you probably won't be very surprised by this, because it's like, hey, this is how we've been drawing out the paper this whole time. This is not new. So you remember at the very beginning when I said you can't draw too many lines? Hey, I wasn't lying to you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that whom had we hurt, and let's put that in column 1, just because this is a good, sane, sound way of putting it together. Whom had we hurt? And so it's going to be name, flip the page, name, flip the page, name, flip the page. And guess what? If you don't know their name, and I know nobody here would ever have that conundrum, but if you don't know their name, that is okay. You just write a description of them as best you can, or a way to remember them, flip the page. And one of the things I'm going to point out is in the next paragraph, it says, in this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So if you're wondering, part of what we are doing, the whole point of this is to develop and to create a sane, sound ideal for who we need to be before, during, and after a relationship. And we'll talk a lot more about that here in a little bit. But when we're struggling with who needs to be in column 1, this is a helpful test that we can subject ourselves to, where it says we subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? So if I am not sure of whether I should include this person on my sex inventory, well, I can ask myself, was it selfish or not? To be followed always by the sponsee saying, but what if we were both selfish? Well, then we were selfish. Let's put it down. Let's have a look at it. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. And so what I want you to know is a lot of times for years, I've been like, hey, try to not group as much as we can. Let's try to not group, but grouping often happens. So what I will say is significant relationships, make sure we don't group. Don't be like ex-husbands, put them all in a group. Don't do that. Put them by name, and hopefully we have their name. If not, we'll find it in the legal document somewhere. No judge, but we'll look at them. But then oftentimes, not you guys, but oftentimes, things like one-night stands, and we can't remember all of those one-night stands. So there are times where sometimes we group one-night stands, or sometimes we group people that we slept with for money, or people that we slept with for alcohol or drugs or other things, or people that we slept with for a place to crash, or people that we slept with, not you guys, people that we slept with so that we would feel a sense of value and worth. And so some grouping does exist. Now, it can also be really helpful to have a look at sex work. And not to take this sort of puritanical, like, bad, but to have a look at how we've engaged with it on either side of the coin, either side of the situation. And it is not to have a look at shaming, but to have a look is this behavior something that is what God would have me do? and how God would have me interact with others. Let's just have a look at it. And similarly, for some people, there are areas like dating apps, pornography, those sorts of things that are especially troublesome, and it can be really helpful to put those down. So that's what we're going to do in column 1. 1 per page. Name, flip the page. Name, flip the page. Tinder, flip the page. And then I was going to just give random names, but I'm like, I'm not going to do that because I didn't see all the people who were on the call, and I don't want to use anyone's specific name because I don't want nobody to be like, the what? No. I am on my best behavior. Alrighty, so we get those names down. And then what I want to do is I want to get into that second column. And I want to point something out. It is no longer about what they did. Rude. We're done. Column 2 and resentments was the last place that I got to look at that and have a real look at that sort of thing, which again, rude. So what we are going to do is we are going to look at where were we at fault. And if I have been fearless and thorough in my resentments inventory, guess what? There's going to be some real crossover when I have a look at like, hey, my exes, pop those down, right? And so that's what we're looking at. Where were we at fault? Before, during, and after. And so when we look at where were we at fault, what are some examples? Well, not you guys. And actually, I'll stop the share for now because I'm going to chat for a little bit for some of the where were we at fault, and then I'll put it up as we get into column 3. But where were we at fault? Now, I'm just going to throw it out there that when I am drinking myself into an alcoholic death, I'm not emotionally available to be in a relationship, So I was active in my alcoholism. I wasn't available to be in a relationship because I'm self-destructing. Also, I know that you guys would never do this, but some of us have a habit of relationship hopping, going from one relationship to another, right? And so we can look at, hey, I didn't take time to heal. I didn't take time to process, to move and have a look at what was going on before I hopped into the next one. I can look at, hey, I know you guys would never, but for some of us, where there's that relationship overlap, where there wasn't a clear ending before a beginning. And we can look at that. We can also look at, what were my motives in showing up to a relationship? Were my motives focused on what I could get? I just want to be in a relationship, so I'm in a relationship, or I just want a relationship so my parents get off my back about being in one, or hey, I'm just sleeping with this person so that they can give me a sense of value, worth, approval, validation. That's what we want to look at. So we start having a look at, was I in any position to be in a relationship? We start having a look at, who was I? And where was I at fault even before the relationship began? Hey, I know you guys would never, move too quickly in a relationship. Second date, we've moved on in. And listen, I didn't have enough stuff for a U-Haul. But also that because we were moving so quickly, we weren't able to be aware of and respond to red flags. Your girl, she was just wearing rose-colored glasses and they just looked like flags. It was like a carnival. Woo, it's exciting. Red flags. And I didn't have the ability to be aware of those and to respond to those. And we can look at hey, I wasn't doing the work to allow me to be a healthy person to be in a relationship. We can also look at where we were at fault within the relationship. So we want to look at things and I'm going to hit a whole bunch. We want to have a look at the first one. Was I abusive? Was I abusive physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, sexually, verbally? Was I abusive? And if I wasn't abusive, if I was in a relationship where there was abuse, and I've been in those relationships, I also want to have a look at that. Not because it's my fault, not because I deserve that treatment, but because I will find myself in a pattern of abusive relationships. And I want to look at what was the thing that allowed me to stay, that allowed me to stay in a relationship where I can see that I'm being harmed, but I can't leave. And that's important. And some of those things, now I know you guys are super well adjusted, but your girl, she's codependent as heck. So was I codependent in the relationship? Did I make that other person my higher power? I know you guys wouldn't, and if you're like, what does that look like? They are responsible for my sense of worth, my sense of identity, my sense of value, my sense of esteem, my sense of security. My moods and emotions are a direct proportion to their moods and emotions. That's a sign that I've made them my higher power. And often and maybe you didn't do this, but maybe you bear with me. What often happens is they stop being an effective higher power. And so I need to kick them out of the God chair because they're doing a garbage job. And I sit my little butt down on that God chair and I need to get them to be who I need them to be. Hey, you need to be more like this and this and this and this. So I assume the position of God. Have we been controlling? Have we been manipulative? Have we been unkind? Have we been cruel? Or again, have we been the other way? Have we been overly passive? Have we been living on eggshells? And man, I can't tell you what a revelation it was when I realized that eggshells were a choice. Because eggshells are me trying to control their moods, their emotions. That's what eggshells are. Was I contorting myself, trying to be somebody that I'm not just so that you'd like me? Do I have walls and masks? Do I have secrets in the relationship? A lot of the things that I want to look at are acting and behaving in ways where I need to keep that behavior a secret. And so that could be what happens when we're trying to keep our alcoholism a secret. It can range from having affairs and being unfaithful to emotional infidelity, financial infidelity. We can look at all of those. We can look at, the nature of the relationship. Was I not communicating? Was I avoiding communication? Was I, only thinking about me and what I could get, overly demanding, uncaring? And we can look at all of that. And we can look at what happened after. Did I just behave poorly so they would dump me so I didn't have to have a difficult conversation? Did I ghost? I was a ghoster. You can call me Casper. I was out, like, woo, I'm gone. Did I ghost? Did I not have communication after? Now, I know you guys would never do this when you break up. You are broken up and you are respectful. But for somebody like me, did you have those little tendrils, where it's like we break up, but then we reach out, maybe late at night. Hey, how's it going? Thinking about you. Oh, what were you thinking at 2 a.m.? It doesn't have to be at 2 a.m., but did we have those little tendrils? We want to have a look at those sorts of things. We want to look at where was I at fault before, during, and after. And so that's what we're really going to dive into in column 2. Now, one of the things that I like to do, I know the vast majority of when I write inventory, I focus on one column at a time, but I also really find it important or really helpful to work column 2 and column 3 at the same time. So when we get to column 3, what are we looking at? We're looking at where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. Not had I been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. We assume that I was, and I look for where. Right? And that selfishness could range from things like being unfaithful to being controlling to just focusing all my time and attention on work to Bill Wilson, he had that golf fever. I got, golf fever. I'm not spending time with my partner. I'm out there golfing all day. It could range from that. I could look at selfish in those ways that I have been acting only from a place of self and not considerate of others and how my actions affect them. Dishonest. The dishonest is the behavior that we keep a secret. The dishonesty can be a lack of communication. The dishonesty can be me trying to pretend to be somebody that I'm not, just so that you like me, just so that I think well of. The dishonesty can be me saying yes when I need to say no. That inconsiderate. When we look at that inconsideration, again, not thinking of others, acting unkind, acting uncaring, acting cruelly. It could also be if my partner is asking me to do something, like pick up my socks or, like clean the bathroom, and I'm not doing it. Like, again, that is an example of inconsideration. One of the other things that I just wanted to talk about in relation to column 2, I just came back to mind, was that idea of being enmeshed in a relationship. So we immediately get into a relationship and they are my world and my only world. That person is the only thing that I focus on, and as a result, other relationships, platonic friendships, those connections fall away. Because if it is an unhealthy relationship and I need to leave, it's a lot harder to leave when I've made that other person my whole world. So the third column allows me to go a level deeper. To see even deeper where I've been selfish, where I've been dishonest, and where I've been inconsiderate. And then what I want to look at is, did I unjustifiably, which is to say unfairly, unreasonably arouse, which is to say create jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness. Now I can create jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness in, I'll say, 3 groups of people. So did I unfairly create jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness in myself, in the person that I was engaged with, or in a third party? For example, let's have a look at jealousy. Where could I arouse jealousy within myself? Well, if I'm bouncing from unhealthy relationship to unhealthy relationship, from grippy sock relationship to grippy sock romance, guess what? I've probably been cheated on. They've probably been toxic and unhealthy. And because I haven't taken the time to heal, I haven't taken the time to utilize discernment, do I show up to a brand new relationship fueled with jealousy and insecurity? And that's where I might have created that in myself, and could create that suspicion in myself. Another way in which I could create bitterness in myself is, am I avoiding communication at all costs? Am I not saying what I need to say? Am I not expressing my needs? Am I not asking for things? Am I not setting boundaries? Am I not, and then we can also look at not respecting boundaries. That's going to affect bitterness in others. Again, we can look at, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness in the partner or person that we were engaged with sexually or romantically? Did I create jealousy by infidelity? And here's the thing, oftentimes when I'm working with people, they'll say, what if they didn't know? And I like to look at, if they were to find out, would this have created jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Because we created the opportunity for those things with our behavior. So infidelity. It could also be like, if we're just picking on somebody's insecurity or saying things to make them jealous or saying things to make them suspicious. If I'm hiding my relapses, that will create suspicion. And again, the bitterness can be in how I treat the other person, or promises that I don't keep. Things that I say that I'm going to do that I don't do, or things that I say that I will not do that I continue to do. And again, how could I create it in a third other person? Well, if I'm engaging sexually or romantically with somebody who is not available to be in a relationship because they're already in one, they're married, they're in a relationship, they're, and it's not open, it's closed, and I'm showing up. And that would create jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness in their partner, in that other person. So those are different ways in which we can have a look at these things. Now, bear with me. When we talk about things like, for example, pornography or dating apps, when we look at where we were at fault, we can look at like, hey, am I, treating people as objects? Am I using these apps just to numb, to avoid looking at myself, to avoid treating what at root is going on? If I'm in a relationship, am I directing that energy away from my partner when I could create connection and direct it towards my partner? Or if I don't feel like engaging in that direction with my partner, are there issues in the relationship that I'm avoiding? And I want to point those out because that's where we can utilize these columns and can be incredibly helpful. So going back to the reading, right after it says, we subjected each relation to this test, was it selfish or not? It says we asked. And any time in this book it says we asked or to ask, that is a prayer. And what's cool about this prayer is that it is a prayer, but it is also a direction. It says we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. So like we do with every single fear, resentments, fear, and sex inventory, we're going to say a prayer before we get into the fourth column. And I'm Canadian, so I'm going to throw in a please. You don't have to, but it's God, please mold my ideals and help me to live up to them. And that's the prayer that I'm going to say before I get into that fourth column, because that fourth column is going to be what informs that sex ideal. That is where the sex ideal comes from. And I'll talk about this just a little bit and then go into the fourth column. But the sex ideal is about who I need to be before, during, and after a relationship. That's what it is about. It is about myself. And I'll say this, it's also what I like to call a living document, which what I mean about that is that it's like a resume. Do not print it off and give it to your employer. Don't use it as a dating profile, or you do you. But what I mean by that is it is going to change over time. The ideal that I have when I'm single is going to be a little different than when I'm in a relationship, or even when I'm dating. And that's going to be a little different than when I'm in a relationship, which is going to be a little different than further on in the relationship when we've been together a couple years or we're engaged. And that's going to be different than when we're married or have kids. It will change. It's meant to change because the nature of the relationship will change, but also hopefully I'm living up to those ideals. So when we talk about what should we have done instead, just like we do in fear, we're going to take what we put in column 2 and column 3 and we're going to flip it. And honestly, because we want to go deeper than I shouldn't have been anywhere near them. That's not helpful in many cases. Of course, there are many times where that's true. Shouldn't have been nowhere near them. Absolutely not. Those flags were red. Avoid. But we want to go deeper. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take everything we put in column 2 and everything we put in column 3, and we're going to flip it. So for example, in column 2, we spoke about, I was drinking. And so in column 4, I need to be sober. And to be sober, I need to be fully engaged in these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. In column 2, we spoke about being codependent. Well, in column 4, I need to be God dependent, higher power dependent. In column 2, we were talking about how I play God, I make them God. Well, what I need that higher power to be at the center of my life and the center of my relationships. And we can talk about how that's possible. That's possible through these 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. We spoke about, those dishonest motives. Guess what I need in a relationship? Honest motives. I might need to take time in between my relationships to heal. I need to show up to my relationships with, and this is a very important word, discernment. And that means to use my judgment without being judgmental. I don't think I'm better than you, but hey, maybe we shouldn't be dating, right? Again, if somebody's a newcomer, off limits, and it's not that I'm better than a newcomer, I'm not, we're equal, but that they are vulnerable. So considering those positions of vulnerability, aware of and respond to red flags, and to be aware of and to be able to respond to red flags, to utilize that discernment. What that means is that we often need to move slowly in a relationship. And I know many of us is I don't know what slowly in a relationship means. Date 3, then we move in, right? But we take our time in relationships. We're considerate of others. We see them as a whole person. We treat them with love, kindness, care, respect, dignity. We give them the dignity and grace of their own experience, as opposed to trying to control them, as opposed to being abusive. We look at maintaining healthy relationships outside of that romantic relationship. We talk about, setting, maintaining, and respecting boundaries. We talk about honest motives before getting into a relationship, being thoughtful, being considerate of others. We also speak about practicing communication. Communication is a practice, and practicing it over time, viewing communication through the lens of cooperation, that we are working together to communicate. I'm somebody that it is so easy for me to try to seek my value and worth from what I think people think of me. So what am I going to do? I'm actively and intentionally going to seek my sense of value and worth from God. So actively and intentionally seeking my value, my worth, my esteem, that safety, that security. I seek that from God, and I channel that to the relationship. I lift them up. I pump their tires. I support. I encourage. And I allow myself to have also a life so that we're not enmeshed. I speak about, we can be, heavy on the conflict or conflict avoidant. Well, guess what? Meditation helps me to be aware of what's going on in the moment. The 10th step, the evening review and prayer, all of that helps me to see the reality of what I'm doing, to make amends where I've caused harm, for my behavior to change and to grow. We can also look at, and of course it can be really helpful to look at, hey, am I working with others? Am I getting out of self, or am I just wrapped up in self? Because man, and I know some of us might not be, but most of us got the codependency. It's so easy to grab a hold of somebody if I'm not connecting with others and I'm not giving to others. We talk about building authenticity, transparency. And of course we do that over time, because it takes time to be honest and to be vulnerable. But we build that authenticity, that transparency, which allows us to be ourselves in the relationship. We look at communicating before, during, and after a relationship. We talk about ending that relationship with grace. And there's many times I've spoken about, let's cut those tendrils, let's treat people with dignity and respect. And so those are some examples. I'm sure there's more of column 2. And we can look at treating the spiritual malady with God in the 12 steps. In column 3, how do I flip it? Well, if I was selfish, if I was dishonest, if I was inconsiderate, guess what I need to be? Selfless, honest, considerate. If I'm engaging in behavior I need to keep a secret, guess what? No behavior that needs to be kept a secret. Living a life of integrity, one with, authenticity and transparency. Which I'm not saying, hey, we gotta share all the things that happen in the bedroom, but you guys know what I mean. If I'm trying to keep a situation a secret, it's an indication I know I ought not be doing it. And then when we look at unjustifiably arousing, jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness, often what that looks like is building love, trust, connection, communication over time. And that's just a bit of a gist of the things that we can have in our 4th column. And as we write on those and as we see those, we begin to illuminate what our sex ideal is. And this is where it comes from. So hopefully that made sense, and if not, keep coming back. I'm just kidding. I love it. So we talk about, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. And I speak about this because it is important. An ideal has no power. We spoke about this in step 2. There is no power in an ideal. The power is not there. The power is in God. And if I have this ideal and I put it on the shelf, I don't change, I don't grow. So the prayer, God, please mold my ideals and help me to live up to them, is also a direction. So I'm asking God to mold my ideals and help me to live up to them. So what do? Well, I do this, and I ask my sponsees to do this. And we'll talk about this when we get to step 5. And who knows when that'll be, at the pace that I go. What we do is when I'm receiving the 5th step, I write what I hear them say their defects of character are. And I write what I hear them say their sex ideal is. So there's no excuse. They definitely have one. And it's not my opinion. It's what they say, for the sex ideal, especially from that 4th column of sex inventory. I write what I hear them say there. And then I give it to them. because I don't need it. I got my own. And to be fair, I could get this is a notebook that I often use to write out their defects and their sex ideals. And I most people I meet online. I don't meet too many people in person, but if we're in person, I rip it out and I give it to them. If it's online, I take a picture. I will let you know a little secret though. I can't even tell you how many people that I've worked with. Men, women, non-binary, people that are gay, straight, polyamorous, married, single, the variety of the human spectrum and human sexuality. And what I will say is I could grab one of those and it would apply to everyone else's. There is so much similarity. Now, of course, some of us have some things that are especially difficult and troublesome. But what I will point out is these ideals, they truly are who we wanted to be this whole time. But again, I can't live up to them if it's a piece of paper that's living in this notebook, that's shoved on the shelf. The power is not in an ideal. The power is in God. So what do I do? So I ask my sponsees after I've given it to them or taken a picture and sent it to them. I'll even mail it to them if they want, but normally they're not asking for that, which is good. But what I ask them to do is I ask them to take each line of that sex ideal that again comes from that fourth column and turn it into a prayer. So instead of, I need to be God-centered, it is, God, I pray that I would be centered upon you and dependent upon you. Instead of building love, trust, connection, communication over time, it is God or higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe. So God, I pray that I would be able to build love, trust, connection, and communication over time. So I turn it to a prayer. And then what I ask my sponsees to do is I ask them to text it to me or send it to me via text. And I make a little Canva thing. So it's a pretty little thing that if they want to, they can print out and then they promptly don't use. And immediately I've got some sponsees that are like, hey, I use mine. Hey, but that's typically what happens. And with the idea that, hey, if they like sunflowers and it's got sunflowers on it, then hey, they might use it and pray with it. And so we get to pray that on a daily basis, and we can meditate with that on a daily basis. If part of my ideal is talking about being self-supporting, I can ask, I can breathe in self-supporting and breathe out financially. Breathe in self-supporting, breathing out emotionally, self-supporting, and breathe out. And I can breathe with it, and I can meditate with it, and I can move with it. And this is important because, again, there is no power in an ideal. The power is in God. And what is going to happen is when I move with it, when I pray with it, when I meditate with it, that power begins to move in my life, and I begin to change, often despite myself. And then over time that, I'm living up to this ideal. I'm doing these things. I'm communicating as a practice, even when it's hard. I'm being thoughtful of others, wild, and then the next time we have a fight, maybe a big fight with our spouse or our partner, or we go through a breakup, it can be really helpful to first do the resentment columns, and then the fear that nobody will love me, and then get to the sex inventory where we update and move with our sex ideal. So that's what I mean by it is a living document. It will grow and it will change as we grow and change. Now I'm just going to finish the paragraph. So it says, we remembered always that our sex powers were God-given, therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. This is an area of our life that is not bad, that is not shameful, but we have a responsibility to be considerate and mindful of others as we go through it, to act in a way that is not that is not harming others. And if that's, and again, it's not like, hey, no fun, all shame. Instead, it is this is something that is God-given, and it is precious. And I don't mean in a puritanical way. I mean I can hurt others if I'm not thoughtful, if I'm not mindful, and there's that idea of enthusiastic consent, where it's making sure that people are open and thoughtful of others. Just so helpful. And so this is an area of our life. We need God. And what I will end on is, welcome to the stage, our next performer, Sex Powers. Great name for a band if you're looking for it. So that's more than enough for me. We're going to continue this topic and wrapping up step 4 next week. Over to Peppa. Sorry I didn't give you much time.